Recording pending. Alrighty. Okay. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for jumping on our little webinar this afternoon, collaborating in the modern digital workplace. I'm Luke Sinclair. Sorry, a frog in my throat. I'm Luke Sinclair, the Director of Customer Success and Growth for Swoop Analytics in North America, located just outside of New York City, where it's very windy this afternoon. So if you hear howling, it may be the wind or maybe my dogs. Thank you all for joining. And we are joined today by a couple of guests. I have Chris Shaida, who's the CEO of RealFoundations. Naomi Souza, who is the Director of Presence and Asset Support at RealFoundations, and also joined by Jace Moreno from Microsoft, who's a Global Customer Success Lead. Each of the speakers are going to share with us some stories about the modern digital workplace from their perspective. I also have on the line Coco Molina, who is my colleague and partner in crime. Hi, Coco. Are you there?
Hello, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today.
So over the course of the next hour, we are going to see if I can make the slide go forward. Here we go, what we're going to talk about. So Chris is going to talk us through what the modern digital workplace looks like over at RealFoundations. Naomi's going to share with us what high-performing teams look like on Teams. I will give you a little bit of insight into how Swoop measures high-performing teams and some of the indicators that we have in the Swoop platform to do that. And then we'll wrap up with Jace sharing with us what's next for Microsoft Teams from the Microsoft products perspective. I think the best place to start might be with introductions. You've heard from me. Coco, you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. And my name is Coco Molina, as Luke mentioned. I am North America West Director for Swoop and also Latin America, and I'm glad to be on the call today.
And then shall we hand over to RealFoundations? You want to introduce yourself, Chris?
Sure, I'm Chris Shaida. You'll be hearing more from me in a second, so I'll turn it over right away to my colleague now.
Hi, everyone. My name is Naomi Souza, and in my role as Director of Presence and Assets at RealFoundations, I spend a lot of time thinking about our modern digital workplace and collaboration, and I'm going to talk to you about how we use Yammer and Teams for all work at our company, and then also how we use Swoop to measure that as part of our performance process each year.
Great. And Jace.
Everyone, Jace Moreno, look after Teams platform globally for Microsoft's customer success organization. And by platform, I mean all things apps and integrations, both internal and external for Teams.
Awesome. So we have, quite a crew here. I see lots of faces, some I know and some I don't, some who have been following us around today, because I think some of you are on a call we did about an hour ago, the Community Roundtable. So good to see you all. We love to hear from you in the chat. Coco and I will be checking the chat if you've got any questions. This is really meant to be casual and fun, so feel free to jump in anytime and ask. I'm not going to force mute you or anything crazy like that. But now let's hand over to Chris and take it away on the modern digital workplace at RealFoundations.
Well, I'm so excited to know that Luke has foregone the forced mute, because I'm known to talk for a long time, so I was quite afraid that Jace is just going to shut me off after my allotted time. So I'll try to get through it quickly. So I'm Chris Shaida. I'm one of the founders of RealFoundations. I spent 20 years saying that. It's very complicated. We are a professional services firm. We do management consulting and outsourcing for large real estate investors. And for those of you who don't know, real estate is actually the largest asset class in the world. It is way, way bigger than all of the public companies in the world, which kind of makes sense because we all live and shop and work somewhere. Or that is, we all live somewhere and we used to shop and work somewhere. We will again someday shop and work someplace else. But we are about 400 people around the world. We have to travel a lot and work from strange places, and then I'll come back into our story in a minute. But I thought I would tell you a bit about our journey to where we are today as a sort of full-bodied, full-throated user of the modern digital workplace based on M365, how we got here, what that looks like quickly from my perspective on a daily basis, a sort of day in the life, and then what we see as the benefits to us and to our clients and to our market. Then I'll turn it over to Naomi. He'll tell you more interesting things. Now she stole all the slide spots, so I only have one slide. So she's got a bunch, but I'm going to talk for a bit, and then I'll get my one slide at the end. So as I said, we're a professional services firm. We're used to not working in an office, and we began our journey towards what we now call the modern digital workplace about 10 years ago. I wrote a white paper at the beginning. When was that, Naomi? 2011, I think. We were looking at everything that was happening with Facebook, and we were looking at this change and people not sending cat pictures on Gmail anymore, but sending cat pictures in Facebook. And we had this hunch that this kind of change in how people communicated and collaborated would be likely to bring benefit to us inside our enterprise. And we were sort of looking for a Facebook for business. This was before there was Facebook for business. I was a long time denizen of various chat forums, discussion forums about strange topics from the very, very early days of the inner tubes. And so knew that there was knowledge in discussions, and knew that I would read discussions that had happened a year ago, 2 years, 3 years ago, and there was knowledge embedded in those, and I was learning from them. So we were trying to figure out, how do we bring that inside our enterprise? A bunch of people who sometimes were together in the same place, but were often spread out into multiple places. And here I have to make a confession. Jace, close your ears. I am not a lifelong Microsoft lover. In fact, from back in my days as a partner at Ernst & Young, many people called me the Microsoft hater. I had admiration for what Gates and Ballmer did with Microsoft as a monopoly, but as a user of technology, I was not enamored of them. So in the beginning of this journey, we knew we couldn't use Facebook as public. I wanted to find something like that. I made a bunch of people in our firm go with me into Google+. Anybody remember Google+? It's short, vibrant life at Google+. And we were trying to figure out how to use circles and how to do intra-enterprise communication and collaboration in that platform. As you can imagine, that did not end well. And I had dragged people kicking and screaming, and they were kicking and screaming harder when we left. So, but we learned a few things. And one of the things that we learned was that we work in real estate. Real estate is a knowledge-intensive business. The table stakes to even begin a conversation are quite high. And it is, I think, the largest user of Excel in the world, the real estate industry. And the models that are in real estate are some of the most complex models that exist in the world. And I was a little slow to this, but some folks like Naomi helped me learn it over time, that we weren't getting real estate away from Microsoft. So we sort of recommitted. And lucky for us, Ballmer left and Satya Nadella showed up. And I sometimes predict that I created Satya Nadella. Of course, he's never seen me or heard of me. It's a little bit like the sports fan who, goes to the bathroom at the key moment of the game and your team loses and you're convinced it's because you went to the bathroom, right? Or vice versa, because you opened the right can of beer at the right time. So lucky for us, Microsoft began this process of turning itself inside out and becoming the sort of thing that I hypothesized about in 2011. And lucky for us, after our unfortunate Google Plus experiment, we found Yammer. This was pre-Microsoft. And we had a very different experience. A few of us got into Yammer quietly to try it out. And what was it, Naomi? Like 3 weeks later, there were 50 people from RealFoundations who were there. So we had this sort of viral experience of people saying, this kind of is cool. This kind of makes sense. And that set us up for other disappointments later in terms of how easy it would be to really make this journey. But it was a way to get started. So that at least was like, aha, there really is something. We really can talk to each other from faraway places and be accumulating knowledge. And for my job, the big value proposition for us as an enterprise and for our clients was I knew that every day when most of our discussion was going on in email, knowledge was dying every day. This big thing we stuck on the wall, email is where knowledge goes to die. So we had these knowledge-rich conversations that were happening all throughout our firm. And that knowledge was only harvested later if one of those people happened to remember and happened to forward all the replies and the ones that weren't reply all. And we had tons and tons of knowledge. And I had these sort of nightmares of all this knowledge just sort of spilling off and disappearing every day. So I knew we needed to do something different. Yammer was our first sort of successful foray into this, not email, but not documents and not formal and not curated, but just people doing their work together and accumulating knowledge in a way that others could learn from it. And that was quite exciting for us. Teams came along, we jumped on that bandwagon as fast as we could, nearly 4 years ago. And we had to work through all the Yammer versus Teams nonsense, and we had a fairly simple formula for that Yammer was for us like our digital water cooler, like the digital bulletin board. It was the place that people would go if they wanted to share with each other ideas about enduring topics. And Teams was like our project team room. We're consultants and we're used to having physical team rooms that were assigned by clients, and we have a conference room. We fill it up with flip charts and stickies, and there's a bunch of people in there. And sometimes you're formally meeting, sometimes you're overhearing other people, sometimes you're watching somebody do a document and say, hey, I can fix that. So the Teams right away resonated with us as a project team room. And to us from the beginning, they seemed to go together quite well. And we're vibrant Yammer users and vibrant team users to this day. They have very complementary but distinct uses for us. Again, Yammer is the place where any practitioner at RF can go, learn things, share things about knowledge, topics of enduring interest to us as a firm. And Teams is where we go to do shared work towards shared goals with defined teammates. And we go back and forth all the time. And practitioners at RF are in Yammer sometimes during the day, and in Teams many hours during the day, and in Outlook a minute or two a day. So a second on that, Outlook hasn't gone away. It's still an important part of this. We sometimes joke because we have lived in various real estate cycles through, downsizing, right sizing. That for us, Outlook has been right sized back to its original purpose of formal communications with external parties. And just in our world today, 90% of our intra-RF messages, which honestly are the most knowledge-rich messages, happen inside Teams. So 5 years ago, I had roughly 500 messages, excluding junk, in Outlook. And today I maybe have 10 or 15. And the other 490 are in Teams or Yammer, because that's where we are not only getting the message out and getting a response, but where I also know that I am contributing knowledge that can be harvested and mined for days, months, weeks, years to come. So our world today is very team-centric. We were told by somebody, it might have been at Swoop actually, at one point a year or so ago, that Microsoft had noticed we were like, who are these RealFoundations people? They appear to be intense per capita users. We're one of the higher per capita users of Teams in the world. And because it's true, we all of us spend most of our day in Teams in the way that 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, most of us spent most of our day with Outlook sitting on our screen. We have 1,000 teams spun up. I am in 150 teams. I am a very active user of the moving teams around in my Teams panel. I have a weekly process of pinning a few channels to the top of my Teams navigation panel, the ones that I think I'm going to be working on that week. And I do a pretty good job of having on my first view the 10 or 15 or so teams that I'm likely to be working in that week. We are very attentive followers of the tea leaves that Microsoft puts out about what's happening in the future. We have been waiting with bated breath for the tasks and teams, and I mentioned, some of you might have heard in the beginning, we were just sort of filling time as people showed up. But we finally got our tasks and teams on Monday in our tenant, so we're very excited about that. We've been exploring lists. We've been attentive followers of the Cortex pre-release announcements, and think that is a very, very important thing to us over the next 3 to 5 years. So a couple things about how we got here. I think we're pretty far down the road of fully inhabiting our digital workplace. I think the first key was business leadership, and not just talk, but this is like us working here. And I now believe people will go where the work is. And so if we really start working in a place, people will find that place. And our first little taste of that was Yammer, where a few of us went in there, and then a bunch of people were like, what are they doing in there? We better go in there and see what's going on. We kind of hoped that would happen with different graphics, one of which I'll show you in a second, as a way to explaining to our own folks why we're doing this. I had 50 conversations with people my age or nearly my age, let's say, who would say, why do I have to learn another app? And I would get hold their phone up to the camera, and I said, well, what do you know, why? And I said, what do you got on your phone? And they said, what do you mean, what do I got? And they said, it looks to me like you got about 25 different apps in your phone. And you use all of those every day, right? Tell me the ones you've used today. So do you really need to worry about another app? And then we finally got into a place where everybody's on board. So a lot of coaching and cheerleading and explaining. The third thing was measurement and feedback. We were, I don't know how early we were with Swoop, but I think we were pretty early. It's been 4 years now we've been using, I think. And we bake that into performance review process. People see where they stand. They see their persona. It is not a negative thing, but the measurement is important. And we've been tracking the expansion of that measurement beyond Yammer into Teams and through the other parts of Microsoft 365. And then I think the fourth thing was, maybe a little bit of a luck, but we were predicting a number of things. Naomi and I stuck our neck out early of being proponents of this and would explain things that were coming. And even though things didn't always come as fast as we hoped, they tend to come. So I think there was this, having a few people who were really on point and are thinking about the roadmap and are able to communicate that and socialize that in the hallways, and then have people start to see that actually is coming true. It's something that we said was going to happen is really happening, and they start to see how this matures. So here we are today, and we are fully inhabiting this ecosystem. And we've done a bunch of work to, and this is my one slide is going to appear at some point while I'm talking. So a bunch of work thinking about this movement from a bunch of apps to an actual ecosystem. And we very much believe that we are now in a world where we have, so on the left is what, cover up the right side for a second. We've all been living there for the past 7 or 8 years since the advent of the iPhone, where we have all these, there's an app for that, there's an app for that, all these isolated little things that do marvelous pieces. And then we're the ones doing all of the connecting of them together, right? You as a human being are doing that. And we saw, I think pretty early, the promise that all of those things could be within one ecosystem, and we get the benefit of those apps but we also get a whole bunch of connective tissue. We get a bunch of administration management, we get a bunch of protection. And again, for us, in a knowledge intense and a knowledge, a demanding knowledge industry, we have a chance to be accumulating knowledge and presenting that to our clients that goes way beyond what's in my head or way beyond what's in my and Naomi's head. It also represents the accumulated knowledge of past practitioners and clients, and that we have this vibrant ecosystem. And the last part about being an ecosystem is an ecosystem, so it keeps going, it keeps evolving, it keeps growing. And it's not just an app with a set of features that work today, it's a bunch of things that keep evolving and keep getting richer. And we had to learn an important lesson about Microsoft in this process. They're constantly walking this fine line of announcing things that so we understand direction, but then, you know, getting us all lathered up about why can't we have the thing you just announced today? And we still go through that emotional process all the time. We went through it with Ignite last week and the week before last. Okay, we want all that now. And we have to keep reminding ourselves that no, we signed up to be in this ecosystem. We're getting tremendous benefit from being in it. That I, as one of the leadership team, am confident that we are not only getting day-to-day usage from features and functions, but we're building this richer and richer and richer massive knowledge that is not all in documents, it's not all in tabular files. A whole bunch of it is in discussions and videos and transcripts and chats, and we'll be able to mine that for days, months, and years to come. So that's a bit of our journey. We are all in. We have, you know, you could say that we've drunk the Kool-Aid, but you could also say that we were clever enough to recognize that Microsoft is doing in the world of software and digital tools what Apple pioneered in the world of hardware. Saying, get on board with us and then we'll solve your hardware problems. Right, so they're saying, get on board with us and we'll solve your software problems, digital workplace problems, and we'll commit to keep growing this ecosystem. And you don't have to keep doing best of breed nonsense evaluations of apps. We're going to keep evolving this thing to meet your needs, because the big payoff for firms like ours anyway is the accumulation of knowledge. So I'll wrap it up there and turn it over to Naomi, unless there's any questions that have come in that you want to insert at this moment, Luke.
I don't see any questions in the chat, so okay. I think we might just keep moving forward. And if I see any questions come through, if anyone has any, just post them in the chat. We will definitely loop in. We've got a little bit of time reserved at the end. Hopefully, we'll have some questions then. Naomi, let's hear how you guys make it real over there.
Well, thanks, Luke, and kudos to Chris for staying in his allotted time for his part of the talk. So as I said in my introduction, I'm going to talk to you today about how we at RealFoundations use Swoop to measure enterprise social collaboration. We do this as part of our biannual review process, and this is something that we've done for the last 2.5 years. And it's really helped us communicate to the company the importance of working this way, working in teams, sharing knowledge in Yammer. So this has really helped us establish that this is just how we work at RealFoundations, and it's not another thing, and it's not an option. So I would generally give an overview of the company and our journey in the modern digital workplace. Chris, thankfully, just did that for me a lot more eloquently than I would have done. But the one thing that I want to stress is that all work today at RealFoundations happens in teams. So everything from the back office support functions, our managed services or outsourcing group, as much as we did pre-Teams adoption. So Teams is where we work, and as Chris said, Yammer is our digital water cooler where we go to share knowledge and ask questions. So before I talk about Swoop, this tip is something that seems to resonate with people when I talk about how we started to use Teams. What you're looking here is a screenshot of a team in our ecosystem. This is the PAS collaboration team, and this is the team where I do the majority of my work at RealFoundations. And I think we've been identified, I think Luke is going to talk about this in a minute, but this particular team in our Teams environment has been identified as one of the most collaborative teams in Teams. And so we're a geographically dispersed team. We've got people in Chennai, India. We've got people in Texas. We've got people in Illinois. And what we do is we start our day every day with a little hashtag WIDT, or what I'm doing today post. We set up a thread for each week, and everyone, I do this daily, even as the leader of the team, we go in and we think about what do we need to focus on today? What are the meetings, big meetings that we have? What are the deadlines? And we start our day with a post. I think this is a good tip. This is a little bit scary for people at first, maybe, but it's habit forming. It's something that we've done for the last, I can't believe I'm saying this, but for the last 3 years, every workday I've started with hashtag what I'm doing today. But it's habit forming, right? Especially in the beginning, if you're new to this journey, this is a little, hopefully, maybe a little bit scary, but not intimidating thing. Just go into Teams every day and post something, right? What I'm going to work on today. Obviously, some benefits from this as a manager, I get to have clarity into what everyone's doing. We weren't all together physically before COVID. Now, obviously, we're not all together at all, but I start my day, Chennai starts their day several hours before I wake up. I start my work day looking and seeing what everybody's working on, making sure that all of our deadlines and priorities are being addressed. And then as a team member, right, I have the history and the focus and all the things that I've worked on, but I also get to see what my peers are working on and make connections there. So I see Chris is raising his hand. I'm going to stop and let him introduce.
I just had to say, since you put it up here, in case anybody's wondering, yes, we actually have one of our practitioners in Chennai. His name is Karl Marx. It's the greatest thing ever. That's really his name. And we get to ask questions of Karl Marx every day. It's fantastic.
That is true. Actually, the graphic that Chris showed you earlier is a graphic by the very talented Karl Marx. He's one of our graphic illustrators. But anyway, I just wanted to share this with you. This is lots of benefits from doing this. But again, especially if you're just starting out on your journey, this might be something that you use with your team. Again, just to get them into Teams every day. And it's really easy just to post the things that you're going to work on today. So that's what I'm doing today. Now I'm going to switch gears and talk about Swoop. And just a little bit of context. So twice a year, actually, the leadership team of RealFoundations comes together. This used to be a physical coming together. It's been virtual over Teams the last couple of years. But we get together twice a year and we talk about the performance of every single employee at the firm. And this takes place over the course of about 3 days. These are 3 really long days. But in addition to other performance metrics that are important to our firm, so on the consulting side, things like client utilization, and the qualitative discussions that we have about people's work, we also now talk about a work out loud score. So lots of different terms for working this way. I'm still sort of partial to working out loud, but we use Swoop. We use both. We've been a customer of Swoop for Yammer for 4 or 5 years, and now Swoop for Teams. The minute it was available, we were customers of that as well. And we use data from both Swoop for Yammer and Swoop for Teams. We combine those together and we marry that total activity in both of those places to come up with an overall work out loud score for the cycle. And that's helpful, right? The numbers, how much people are posting or replying or liking. But what we really love about Swoop are the personas. So because, as I said, the total activity is a quantitative measure, it tells us something, but the personas really speak to the quality of what people are doing in Yammer and in Teams. And so what we've done is we've set some expectations on Swoop personas by level. So for example, if you're a new hire or maybe a junior consultant in our consulting practice, it's okay for you to come in and be an observer for some period of time, right? It's okay for you to get the lay of the land and read and learn and get comfortable. But as people learn more, we expect them to start sharing more, and maybe they become broadcasters. But really what we want is our senior practitioners to come in and be catalysts and engagers. So we want people who have experience and knowledge and capabilities to start conversations or engage in really rich conversations and connecting people and knowledge, especially in Yammer. So the first screenshot was just a data dump. We literally run the benchmarking for everybody in the company. We marry the two, Yammer and Teams, and then we benchmark everybody. And then twice a year, we make an announcement via Yammer where we share the Work Out Loud benchmarking with the entire company, along with some messaging that mimics a lot of what I just said, right? That this is an input into the roundtable process. We reiterate the expectations that people are contributing to Yammer, that people are working in teams, and that we have expectations about personas depending on what level you are in the organization. And in terms of what we found, I think people, at least at our company, are pretty competitive, and they like the benchmarking. That's something that they look forward to when this post comes out. There's a lot of rah-rahs about I'm more collaborative in Microsoft in the Microsoft ecosystem than you. And then the other thing, which Luke, if you'll just jump to the next slide. One of the things we're also focused on is showing improvement over time. So we've taken the data, the data that we export twice a year from Swoop for Yammer and Swoop for Teams, and we've created just a little Power BI dashboard. And this is an actual example from our last cycle, but it takes data from Swoop and it allows us to look at net change from a period over period. So in this example, right, in the prior cycle, this person ranked 140 in the entire company in terms of their activity in Yammer and Teams, but they were an engager in Teams, which is great. And then the progress moving up 100 spots. So that's a positive story there. Let's see with and then the last thing. So this is our roundtables dashboard, and this is a Power BI dashboard that, as I said, we look at lots of performance measures for an individual during the roundtable process. There's utilization, there's time off, but you can see here in this highlighted box, one of the things that we added. I think this is now the second year that we're doing this. So we're about to start this review process, and I think this will be the fourth time that we're doing this. But we're now able to integrate Work Out Loud behaviors or Yammer and Teams Swoop data into the overall performance review process. So for every single practitioner during the roundtable process, we'll talk about their level and their expectations and how much time they build to clients, and the assets they may be created during their non-billable time. But we also now talk about their contributions to the modern digital workplace at RealFoundations. So that's an exciting enhancement that we've made to our review process. So let's see. I think that's probably it for me. I'll turn it over to Luke.
Thank you so much. I love hearing about how you guys are using, the analytics to inform the HR review, sort of annual review process. I have been such a big proponent of this for a long time. I feel like there's another webinar that could be the topic for next time. Thanks, Real Foundations team. Excellent stuff. Really quickly, I want to show you a little bit sort of about how Swoop thinks about high-performing teams and some of the metrics in our dashboards that could help you either as a customer or a potential customer who's looking at Swoop, how they might help you understand what high-performing teams look like in your organization. For those of you who haven't seen our Teams benchmarking report, you can download it on the Swoop website. I actually have a QR code later in this slide deck, so you can just take a photo of it and get access. But we complete the world's largest benchmarking studies of both Yammer and Teams. In our Teams benchmarking report, we analysed a lot of conversations across our customer base, and what this gives us the ability to do is work out what the best practices look like and also the worst practices. And I thought today be good to focus on sort of what are some of the characteristics that we've identified of high-performing teams and what those characteristics translate to in an actual team in Microsoft Teams. So a couple of things that we know high-performing teams look like. We know they're about maximum of 10 members. So a great team has around about 10 members, and in teams that looks like 10 members and all of them are active and participating. We know a high-performing team is a team where everyone talks. So it's not sort of a broadcast channel. It's like, this is a self-directed team where people are posting and replying. It's not dependent on a single person who's, sending out all the messages. And they are using @tagging instead of email. I loved what Chris was saying earlier. Email is sort of more for our formal communicating outside the organization. Inside, we use Teams and we use the @tag if we want to get someone's attention. Characteristics of high-performing team number 3, the feeling of psychological safety. In our research, we know that team members want to feel as though they can communicate freely there, and it's not sort of going to be unsafe. So what that looks like in Teams. Team members are able to ask questions and they feel good about that. Many two-way relationships exist between team members. And of course, there are no private conversations. These are things that we're talking about as a team. We know that the high-performing teams are connected to other teams. So team members in the Teams environment are also active in other places. They're not just coming there to do this one thing in this one team. They are communicating across the organization in Yammer, and they're also active in other teams on Teams. And the last one that we observed was that teams have a common purpose, and that really in Microsoft Teams is a sum of everything that I talked about. So a little bit of insight there into sort of what we have seen in our research on high-performing teams, and I do want to show you what this looks like inside of Swoop. And apologies to our customers on the line because I'm showing you some reports or widgets from the new UI, which hasn't launched yet, but I'm really excited about it and I think it looks beautiful. So I love to use it. We're going to talk about that next week more. But these are some of the indicators. We know, mentions and curiosity, right? So the mention index, we know that posts with at mentions get more replies. So this is helping us with that, the everyone talks aspect. Curiosity, in this case, it's pretty low in this widget, but curiosity is about how many people are asking questions. We know that posts with question marks get more replies. And then, of course, you've got response rate and two-way relationships. So really getting an indication inside of Swoop on the health of your team's network. So that's just a little bit from me. And of course, anyone who wants to learn more about Swoop, me and Coco, both here in the States, would be very happy to talk to you and give you much deeper demo than this. But I want to bring on Jace because he's going to talk to us about what's next in Microsoft Teams, which I think's exciting. We know there's been a few cool announcements lately, and some things we've been anxious to get our hands on. So, Jace, I'll hand over to you. It looks like you've managed to get the presentation going, so it's good we brought in the experts for that. I'll let you take it away.
That was great stuff. It's a pleasure to be here. So look, I've got my phone up too. If anyone wants to throw anything in the chat as we're going, happy to keep this going in real time. But while we were having this discussion, I actually changed my second slide here, and I added this one. And it was not to be cliche and add a quote, but I was thinking about Chris's point that he made at the very beginning of this call. And Chris, I love that you're trying to be polite and mention that you weren't a fan of Microsoft, but I don't think we can expect that, right? And it's nobody is exclusively using our tools anymore, is what I'm trying to say. And it's 2020, and Satya has been so critical, our CEO, into that foundation of the culture that we have now, and recognizing that we are a platform company at our core. And that's at least how I deciphered what he's saying here. But our job ultimately, and why I've loved what I've been doing for the past 2.5 years, is because we're helping organizations leverage the investments they've already made, whether they were built by Microsoft, whether they were built by you or the organizations themselves, or frankly, sometimes whether even built by a competitor. And how do we allow organizations and help them use those investments better to get things done that they couldn't do before? And look, we all found out about 6 months ago, I think, that many of our organizations could move a hell of a lot faster than we thought. And that opened up so much potential and opportunity. And back to the point of what we're going to chat about today is this is what we're hearing from a lot of organizations around the globe. We're hearing we're digital, we're collaborating like never before. Microsoft, what's next? How do we really take advantage of this investment we've made with your organization over so many years, and particularly in Teams? And this is a little something that I put together here. Now, this isn't formal Microsoft based off data. It's just based off the 2.5 years of experience that I've had working on Teams platform, which I'll show you what that means in a second. But I have seen this very common evolution of the way that organizations use Microsoft Teams, regardless of which geography they're from, which industry they're in, or which shape and size their organization takes. And most of the times it's, all right, we needed to solve for business continuity first. We needed to make sure that people could work from wherever they were and it was no longer a place that they had to go. I think we've checked that box in most places, right? Then it's the next step is usually how do we centralize some of these investments we've made and bring together not only people and collaboration, but the tools and the workplace applications that they need to get work done. So we have everything centralized and it's easier to find these things. But that's just step one, right? Step two should be then how do we modernize these applications? How do we give them new value and capabilities that makes them more valuable and easier to use so I can get my work done better? And then ultimately that gets to a point where we replicate and evolve. And I'm going to give a shout out to Tom and Ron who are on this call from Wiley. A lot of organizations, particularly when it comes to replicate and evolve, build centers of excellence internally. And they've got an awesome one that they run that I think is fantastic. And I'm happy to share. We actually did a video with those guys on what they're doing, but it's how do you turn this into a model that adheres to your governance policies? And so look, ultimately what I'm trying to say here is the higher up you start, the more value you realize faster. And I'm going to come back to that in a second, but just what we're hearing from a lot of organizations is, again, this isn't just about Microsoft apps. It's about an opportunity to meet people where they already are. Now, if you weren't familiar, we talk about Teams is a platform, and I want to just give you one view of what that looks like before we go into a couple of real examples. Now, this is based on your organization, whether or not your tenant admins who run Microsoft Teams have made these available, but out of the box, so to speak, on day one, there's over 600 applications available built by Microsoft and a majority built by third-party organizations. And again, many of whom are direct competitors, but that's the reality of 2020, that are available right in Teams for you on day one. But then we're also seeing a lot of organizations either take their internal homegrown applications or starting to build new applications inside of the Teams experience, which has been a lot of fun, and that's where I spend most of my time. And this usually comes up in two varieties. One is our low-code, no-code solutions, meaning that you do not need to be a formal developer in order to deliver these. And one of these is Power Platform, one of these is App Templates. Not going to go into these in detail since we don't have time today, but I'm happy to share some follow-up links if anybody wants to check these out. I will show you some examples though. And then finally, we see a lot of built from scratch solutions where I would include a full-time developer, where they're building bots from scratch, where they're leveraging some of our APIs to connect into different services. the possibilities are really endless there. But there's one image I'm hoping gets burned into everybody's retinas, and I mean that in the most positive way I possibly can from my part of the presentation. Is that Microsoft Teams, we've heard a lot of organizations call this the front door to the organization, but it's this place to, again, centralize your existing investments that you made. And I think that's just step one. If I'm being really honest, just centralizing doesn't excite me, because I could do that in a web browser and in a tab if I really wanted to. I've got all my tabs sitting side by side and they're right there, and that's centralized to an extent. I want these applications to do more for me. I want to make my job easier so I can go focus on things that are more valuable. And that's exactly the conversations we're having with customers right now. So to just pause and take a step back though, I also hear this one quite often when I start having this conversation. We need to get our people to adopt the basics first. And I get it, and I understand where that mindset's coming from. But again, over the past 6 months, I think we all saw that a lot of our notions on what we could achieve with technology in our organizations was completely flipped. And I say politely that your innovation should start with your adoption, right? It doesn't need to be later. It doesn't need to come up on that maturity curve. And I want to show you a couple of examples of organizations who have done this. And it's leveraging, again, these investments that they've had. So as I show you the first one, I want you to imagine a workplace. And I'd imagine this represents everyone's workplace on this call, because it sure as heck does at Microsoft, where you have few people who are responsible for helping many people. Okay? Now at Ernst & Young, this is one of the cases they were facing. They have a very small group of people who are responsible for technology adoption and change management, as well as corporate communications. And when they were rolling out Microsoft Teams, and this was pre-COVID, they said, why don't we take a different approach to the way that we're going to get people to adopt technology? And why don't we leverage some of these services that we've already built and add additional value into them? And so what Ernst & Young did, and Jonathan is one of the gentlemen who shared this with us quite a few times, is they took this intranet site that they had called EY Info, and they pinned it for users on the left-hand rail. Okay? And I'm happy to share, I'll give you a link to show you how to do this at the very end. Pin that on the left-hand rail, and they put it for users in Teams, and they constantly update what you're seeing right here on the announcements page, right when you pop into this on Teams. And so when users got Teams, EY made sure that all users knew that was sitting right there. And what they had at their fingertips now was a direct link into an FAQ bot. So frequently asked questions where users could self-serve, and it alleviates the amount of time that experts are spending responding to questions. And I'll get to that in a second, because that's the second evolution here. They had live training that they were hosting, direct links to it right there. Interactive learning, where you could take hands-on experiences. And then they leveraged some of the videos that we had at Microsoft. What I thought was so cool is not only did this lead to, and this was EY's data they gave us, a 40% increase in adoption by just doing this, which is pretty staggering. What they started doing is, based on the frequently asked questions that they were receiving from the bot, they started to evolve every week or every 2 weeks what was being put right here on the announcements page. As you can imagine, after a couple of weeks and a couple of months, users became a little more mature and they didn't need the basics anymore. So how do you continue to evolve with your users? And there's a bunch of things that we're talking about with Ernst & Young right now and how they evolved this solution and this application. But this all started from an existing intranet page leveraged to drive Teams adoption, which I think is pretty powerful given the impact that it's had. Oh yeah, sweet. Please post the questions there too. Just checking the chat right now. And then so the next evolution of this that we see with organizations is, look, that's great, but just pinning an intranet site can't be our solution. We need longevity. We need agility. And I think everybody recognizes we need agility after the past 6 months. And so what happens in a lot of organizations is centralizing becomes easy, but then you end up having a ton of content and information that's been centralized. And so how do you make it easier for users to get access to that information? And so just one last example I want to show you here, and going back to this slide, is I'm going to show you an example leveraging our app templates, particularly our frequently asked questions bot. And this is in the context of Dentsu Aegis Network. So big organization, I believe they're based out of Japan, but the team that we worked with was in the UK. And very similar to Ernst & Young, 3-person IT collaboration team that is responsible for 60,000 leveraging Microsoft Teams. And just like Ernst & Young, their CIO came to us and said, we want to figure out how can we do this better? How can we drive adoption digitally versus what we always do, which is hold a bunch of in-person events, which no one can really do today, or most can't. How do we do this digitally? And so they said, look, we've already got this central knowledge base inside of Teams. And the way they built it is they took information from their subject matter experts and they centralized it into what they called their WorkSmart intranet site. So this is what we would call in the tech industry a knowledge base. Tons of tribal knowledge and resources and information. And it's at Microsoft, we've heard you talking about these Teams application templates, and one in particular, this template bot. And what we'd want to do is we want to build a WorkSmart bot, which is the same name as the internet page, just like EY Info, same name. And we want to make sure that users can spend some of their time asking these common questions and get answers from the bot, which is just pulling information straight from that KB or that knowledge base. So again, leverage these investments you had. The beauty is to set these bots up, we've already built the bot itself. You're just pointing it to the knowledge base. So really easy to set up. Now, I will say one thing. I don't want to oversell bots either, because while it is very easy to set up a bot, I've done it before and I've never written a line of code in my life, to build something valuable takes time. Okay, that's not unique to bots. That's not unique to Microsoft technology. That's life, right? And so to build something valuable takes time. So I don't want to, again, oversell, but it's very easy to get started. And we've seen some incredible outcomes in very short amounts of time. Just to go back to the Dentsu example. So they built this experience right here, and they sent one email communication out to their users pre-COVID, okay? And they had 30,000 people adopt Teams without holding a single training session themselves. 30,000 people over the course of 4 months, this was done in 2019, 30,000 people adopted with one communication, because what they told users when they reached out to them is your first point of contact is that WorkSmart bot that we pinned on the left-hand rail for you in Teams. And if it can't answer your question, what it'll do is it'll notify the experts, so those 3 people in the change management team, and they'll get back to you as soon as possible. And so you can see we're seeing these common evolutions with a lot of organizations. We built a bot internally called Appy, which is the same thing that I just showed you. We started with the internet, we built it into a bot. We wanted users to self-serve. If you want to get started, deliver this yourself, that right there is a direct link to how you can pin the intranet or the knowledge base. And that right there is you have 2 different options now to build that Q&A bot. And again, those are templates. You're just pointing them into the right resource. I've also filmed this evolution with 2 more iterations. We don't want to go too crazy today, that you can see from other customers around the globe. So I'll share all of these links into the chat if you want to leverage. But I'll leave you with this. And I would imagine that because we're on a Swoops call, no one here is afraid to try anything new. But I get this a lot of times from customers, is there's a little bit of I'll go back to how this was phrased earlier with Luke, but that psychological safety to try something new. And I'd highly encourage it, because we're seeing some incredible things happening around the globe right now. And it's not just theory. A lot of this is really going on. So look, that's all for me. I want to shut up. We got 5 minutes left. Hopefully this was valuable for all of you, and we're here to answer your questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Jace. That was great. I'm going to, while we sort of seeing if we've got any questions, I'm going to throw up, if I can find it. He's not very good at doing 2 things at once, so just bear with. I'm going to put up the QR code. If anyone wants to download the Swoop Microsoft Teams benchmarking report, came out earlier this year. Oh no, we're back at the beginning. Hang on, let's speed through here.
I've actually also put the link on the chat, so if anyone's interested and you're unable to get that up, it's in the chat.
Yeah, so we have, thanks Coco, we have Yammer and Teams reports are both available. You can actually also sign up right now for the next Yammer benchmarking report, which we are in the weeds of working on right this minute. It will come out early to mid-November, so if you scan this code, you can jump over there and download a free copy of any of the historic reports. We've been doing them for quite a number of years. The Teams one just recently this year. Do we have any questions? We've got a couple of minutes left before the top of the hour. You are all able to unmute if anyone wants to speak up, or if you want to post a question in the chat, we'd be happy to answer it. Everyone's gone shy, which is not usual for Swoop customers. Usually they're
very active and very...
We have psychological safety here, guys. I promise.
This is a great presentation. Great presentations on both fronts, on RealFoundations and how they are using these tools to better their organization, and Microsoft as well. Thank you so much for being a part of this.
I see a few people typing, so no, Sarah, great, thanks. Look, it looks like we are no questions, but of course we're here. If anyone wants to ask a question later, I can connect you with anyone who is on the call today. Thank you to my guests. Everyone was fantastic, and I wish you all a very lovely Wednesday afternoon, and hope to see you all soon. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.